Good morning, Vietnam. Oh, wait, that's a different show, Ted. Good morning. Good morning, everybody out there in streaming world.
And why was Good Morning Vietnam cheery? It's just because it was Robin Williams. It's like, it's like Good Morning Vietnam. I mean, it's supposed to be, it's a pretty good movie, but it's like, and it's Robin Williams.
I miss Robin Williams.
And of
Anyway,
course, did we know he was a depressive and hated himself and everything. But, also apparently a very sweet guy.
Who doesn't? He was a gem. Who didn't love Robin Williams? Good morning, everybody. I am Manila Chan. That over there is Ted Rall. You are tuned in to the Ted Manila Information Show, TMI for short, where we'll bring you too much information. Anything from news, politics, lifestyle, culture, fad diets, I don't know, taboo stuff, the occult, whatever. Anything and everything goes, because you just can't get too much information, I guess, in our opinion. So if you guys are looking for a straight-laced, button-down news talk program, this is probably not going to be for you. There might be.
Who's looking for that, though? Who's really? No one's looking for that. No one.
I don't know. People are, because, I don't know, the mainstream media still exists, and they're all buttoned down and fake news and whatever. But some, there's still viewership there. So, anyway, if you guys want to know stuff that you already know that you're curious about, we'll talk about it. And then there's going to be stuff that you didn't know that you needed to know that Ted and I will elucidate you to. That's a $500 Jeopardy word. We are live Monday through Friday, 10 a.m. Eastern. So be sure to please like and follow the show. Subscribe where you can if it's applicable to you, like on Rumble. The Ted Manila Information Show starts now.
All right, so should we do the headlines? I think we will. All right, let's get into it on this Monday morning, or whenever you're watching this later on. But if you're watching it live, it's 10:03 Eastern time here on the East Coast. All right, defense ministers of the Group of Seven, also known as the G7, wealthy democracies, over the weekend backed Ukraine's so-called irreversible path to NATO membership. By the way, I don't know if anything's really, truly irreversible, Manila.
I know.
It's kind of like, let's just say that like all those democracies are nuked tomorrow and all die. Is Ukraine still going to be a member of NATO? If the earth falls into the sun,
posthumously, yes.
Will Ukraine, whatever's left of it, be still a member of NATO? I kind of think nothing's really irreversible. Anyway, they expressed concern over threats to UN peacekeepers targeted by Israel in Lebanon. Well, I expressed concern over them too, because they were, killed. The first ever gathering of G7 defense ministers took place as Israel and the Lebanese armed group Hezbollah exchanged fire, and one drone directed at Israeli Prime Minister Benjamin Netanyahu hit his holiday home. This is why, Manila, I'm not in favor of having two homes. I'm always like, you can't be in two places at once. And there you are. You're in Tel Aviv or Jerusalem, busily committing genocide. You're busy. Genocide's a lot of work. You're genociding all day long. People think it's easy, but it's not. And then, like while you're there, just genociding, doing your job, then like your house, takes a drone hit, and then then you have do you have your groundskeeper, take care of it? Maybe your groundskeeper gets blown up by a drone. It's a headache. And so my advice to BB is, sell the second home. You can't be in two places at once. Get an Airbnb like a normal person. All right, here we go. Italy holds the G7 rotating presidency for 2024, while the West grapples with the Russian advance in Ukraine and China's military maneuvers around Taiwan, as well as heightened tensions along the border of North and South Korea, along with Italy. Yeah, did you see? I'm sure you did, Manila, about like the North Koreans were being petulant as usual, and that's kind of like their main mode. Their modality is petulance, and they blew up
their default setting.
They blew up the road in the DMZ between North and South Korea. Like fuck you. We're never going to use this road. Like that's it. We're so broken up. that like the
Is that the
13th.
same like, that's exactly what it is, Ted. It is like a couple that has broken up, like, many, many, many times, but you're like, "But we have a family, we have, like, this." And then one of the pair is like, "You know what? Fuck this. Just destroy I'm blowing up the house. I'm torching the house." Kind of like Left Eye from the girl rap group TLC when she decided to burn her football player boyfriend's all of his stuff in the bathtub because she was broken up one last time, and then it ended up lighting the whole house ablaze.
So she was a super genius.
Oh, but then she passed away
Did
in a
she?
terrible. Yeah,
What
she
what
was
happened?
doing,
She
like,
get lung cancer from the fire she started?
no,
What?
she was actually, like, in South America somewhere going on, like, a humanitarian mission, and her van fell off the side of a cliff.
Whoa. Now,
Yeah.
now, did the boyfriend like maybe have access to the lug nuts on the
I
tires
don't
on the wheels of that van, like kind of like in self defense of his all of his articles that were destroyed. I mean,
she threw Rolexes in there, she threw expensive, like, shoes in there, like, all of his suits,
I'm
she just
sorry, like by the way, I
must
just
be a
want
big
to say,
bathtub.
so I'm curious, as a woman, how do you feel about that? You hear those kinds of stories, and we're all supposed to kind of snicker, like it's a joke, like in the movies, it's supposed to be funny when you see like the angry wife throwing all the guy's shit out onto the lawn or whatever, and everyone's like, "Oh, that's really funny," but
No.
actually, it
That
must
was
be absolutely horrifying, and it's just like it's so wrong, right? I mean,
Look,
it's
I
so
it's
wrong.
yes, it is very wrong, but okay, I've never obviously, I'm not a multimillionaire rap artist, so I don't know what it would be like to have access to, like, tens and tens of thousands of dollars of stuff, like a Rolex watch or multiple Rolex watches.
Mm,
Because if that were me, speaking as Manila,
sell
present
it,
day, regular person Manila, I would take that boyfriend's stuff and
Etsy that shit.
I would pawn that shit. Take it to a pawn shop.
At least sell it, because then at least something came out of it. You're still stealing. I mean, look, I don't care what the person did. If you hate the person, they fucked you over, whatever. They're the worst person ever. Just leave. Just dump them. Let them
Right.
have their shit. Be gone. Because that's an entanglement, right? Like you can go to the cops, and it's just like that's
Entanglement.
not worth it. It's just not worth it. That's my public
But
information
but
message for
that's
today.
basically what the North Koreans did, was
It
they
is.
did the Left Eye and just burned up the whole house.
We
Fuck
hate
it.
you so much. Fuck you. All right, here we go. Then, and then along with Italy, the G7 includes the U.S., Canada, France, Germany, and Britain. I remember when it was the G8 when Russia was in it. Representatives of NATO, the European Union, and the Ukrainian Defense Minister Rustan Umerov also joined the talks. In its final statement, the G7 backed Kiev's or Kiev's, depending on, I guess we'll call them Kiev. I feel like generically countries and people should be allowed to be called what they want to be called. Like, if you're trans,
Sure.
you can be called what you want. If you're, like Myanmar, the West still refuses to call them Myanmar, even though it's been decades, still insist on calling them by their colonial name of Burma. But,
Right.
whatever. Anyway, back to Kiev's irreversible path to full Euro-Atlantic integration, including NATO membership. Irreversible path. Yeah, weird. Okay, moving on. Millions of Cubans are still in the dark amid a worsening power crisis. The collapse first hit Cuba's western provinces, including the capital of Havana, on Friday. I wonder if there's no power at Guantanamo. I mean, that would really,
Ooh.
be a problem for the torturers.
No,
They're going to
they
have to
have to have
torture
their
in the
own.
dark. Yeah, they
No,
have
no, there's
generators.
gotta be generators there. There's gotta be, but, even at this point, Ted, with when you have been trapped as the detainees have been for, like, 20 years, I think at this point
More. Yeah.
it's kind of like, um, it's kind of like the elephants at the circus where they can just have a tiny little string attached to them and they won't pull away because,
They
it's
know
just
they're not
taken.
going anywhere.
So they're just kind of like, okay, even if they heard the gates go click, and they know they're like, oh shit, it's unlocked. They wouldn't know what to do right after 20 years and being beat into submission. So but really realistically, I think Gitmo has its own power supply.
I mean,
So,
that's good because, like, with the all the cattle prods and everything, they have to be
right.
charged.
You gotta
And
charge them regularly. It's real again, it's a lot of work to
the power
torture
drills, people always forget
and
the power
maim.
drills that they used on them too. I mean, well, I mean, it's better than using an old-fashioned auger bit so slow. Anyway,
But
uh,
yeah, you need to be fully charged to torture and maim people. That's all I'm saying.
anyway, there's no clear timeline for restoration, while the Antonio Guterres power plant. Is that any relationship to the Secretary General of the UN, Antonio?
No, it's similar names spelled slightly different.
I wonder who their Cuban, must be a revolutionary hero of some sort, was brought back online over the weekend. Its 500 megawatt output falls far short of the 3 gigawatts the island needs, and its output has dropped to 370 megawatts. I love it when they tell us stories like this, because I wonder what percentage, Manila, of people who hear, they're like, oh, fuck, 500 megawatts. That's not nearly that. Who knows what that means? Nobody. I was a physics major and I don't know what that means.
I don't I don't know, but I know I don't look, no, I don't know about any of that stuff in power because you know how all of our light bulbs went from like 60 watts to whatever they call it now? Like I don't even know
Oh, it's
what
much
it's
higher.
labeled.
Yeah, we've gone from incandescent to
Right.
the new ones that no one likes.
Yeah, that no one understands like what that
And,
output power
and each
looks
one
like.
costs like $30, but
Right.
but it lasts like multi-generational, like you account for it in your will. Like your
Our
great grandchildren will
grandchildren.
have the same light bulb.
Like my grandmother used this when she was
A
typing up
pioneer.
her manifesto.
Your Unabomber manifesto. Residents of Cuba are cooking on open fires. Water supplies are threatened. Bread is running out. And people are running out of patience, which led to protests in Marianao and Cuatro Caminos on Saturday. Power cuts and food rationing prompted protests earlier this year. And while the regime remained in charge, the latest crisis is the worst since Hurricane Ian damaged Cuba's power grid in 2022. President Miguel Diaz-Canel blames the U.S. embargo, they call it El Blocado, which has left Cuba unable to maintain electric plants due to a lack of foreign reserves to pay for parts. Cuts in subsidized oil imports from Venezuela also made it impossible to operate facilities due to lack of fuel, leaving some households without power for 8 hours a day this year. The crisis has been compounded by Hurricane Oscar, which made landfall on Sunday with winds of up to 85 miles an hour and 5 to 15 inches of rain. Yeah, the public anger is rising there. Have you been to Cuba? I was there in
I have
2000.
not.
It's really
Oh,
cool.
so jealous. That brief window that Barack Obama
Mhm.
opened up the opportunity. I had other stuff going on. I couldn't go home with people, not well back home in California. So I had to spend all my time going back to California. And, then that window closed very quickly when Bad Orange Man came to power. And that was
This
one of his
was one of the worst things that he did. I mean, the people of Cuba, I mean, but if there's ever been the ultimate proof that sanctions do not work, is Cuba.
right.
I mean, you could say, well, they're finally working now, since they were imposed in the early around 1960. But I mean, come on. I mean, those sanctions are older than I am, and I'm 61 years old. And
It's
obviously,
crazy.
and the thing is, when you look, I don't know how things are now. I was there 24 years ago. I'm sure things have changed. But while I was there, the general feeling was like we would rather live the way you Americans do. But we remember our grandparents told us what it was like under Batista when
Mhm.
Cuba was an American vassal state. And
Right.
all our profits were going back to American corporations, for sugar and whatnot. And
Right. The sugarcane.
and we were like, fuck you. We don't want to ever go back to that. We would rather die standing tall and independent than to live on our knees. And I don't know if that's still the case or not. Maybe people can chime in and let us know. But that's definitely, I think, the vibe that I was on. Got. Also, I got to say, if you ever do go to Havana, my strong recommendation is stay at the Havana Libre Hotel. So the Havana Libre is the old Hilton because it has the same H,
Wow.
but they turned the H, they lopped off part of it and turned it into an L. That classic Hilton logo, the swoop.
Yes.
So anyway, the when you go into the rooms, you Sammy Davis Jr. could walk right in. I mean, it's
How cool.
perfectly 1960, frozen in time. The
Oh,
phone,
way to
Bakelite.
my heart.
It's a Bakelite phone. It's like all the tones are exactly, and it's not ragged or run down at
Right.
all. It's like
It's
not
like the
it's not
cars, right?
worn. It's well, the cars are kind of interesting, right? I mean, the cars are kind of like like a Hollywood actress who's had a lot of work done, and you can see that. Yeah, they look, they're old, and they have 50 million coats of paint on them. Under the hood, everything is like jerry rigged and like basically
I know.
aftermarket, and it's not like what the car enthusiasts would say. It's not cherry. Like you
Well,
would want to if you like really wanted a 55 Chevy, you would
right.
not want one from Cuba because it's underneath. It doesn't look anything like it should to an American car aficionado.
So I have a girlfriend who in that Obama window when he kind of thawed relations, she immediately she's also Afro-Cuban herself. So she immediately went there and bought up a little piece of property to turn into like an Airbnb because she thought
Mm.
this is going to be like like the future. Americans are finally going to see, my people and blah blah blah. And so she goes and does that.
It's natural.
And
I mean, they're 90
she
miles away
restores
from the
it.
United States. I mean,
Right.
it's absolutely,
So,
everyone else goes there. All the
but
Europeans,
I'll
the
tell
place is
you,
full of Europeans.
given that she has her heritage is Afro-Cuban, she says that the overwhelming the climate among the people and the feeling is still that of Viva Revolucion.
Hmm.
It's still like that's still it's just ingrained in them as much as they would like
Hasta la
to
vista,
have.
siempre. Yeah. Hmm.
Right, they still want, this modern they're aware, obviously, of what we're living like in the US or in other parts of the West, but, they feel that there has to be some way or another that Cuba can join the 21st century without giving up their rights and their freedom as an independent sovereign state. So they still have hope that that will happen one day. But then, of course, you have the Cubans that have immigrated to the U.S. down to Florida, mostly, right?
Yeah.
Who feel the other way, who are like, just get out of there. The communists got to go. We just got to integrate and become, another, I don't know, like a U.S. Virgin Island, basically. And that's not a popular opinion still to this day. So,
Yeah. No, I know. Look, what's weird to me is that when Biden came in, he didn't reverse the bad orange man's sanctions, and
right.
Kamala Harris hasn't made, as far as I know, any statement whatsoever about this. I mean, this is like, you know, uh, Democrats always like to say there's such a huge difference between the Democrats and the Republicans. I'm not saying there's no difference. There are certain differences, but I mean, the differences are not nearly as big as Democrats would like us to believe, especially when it comes to foreign policy and imperialism. I mean,
Right.
they're they're the same. I mean, the Cuban people have done nothing to deserve any of this. And in fact, their
Right.
government never did anything in 1960 to deserve it. I mean, they
Right. Well, they
overthrew
did,
an
Ted. They
oppressive
said
regime.
no, what they did is because they told the US to fuck off.
Right.
And that was enough.
Well, they didn't even really want to, right? I mean, if I went to the national, one time I went to the National Archives, and I don't know if it's a permanent display or if it was just the time I went there, but they had a letter from very young Fidel Castro writing to, I might have been FDR or
Mm.
Truman, but basically talking about how much he loved the United States and wanted to come to the U.S. and admired its democratic values and its anti-colonial posture after World War II. And,
Mm.
basically and then one of the very first things Castro did after the revolution was to reach out to the United States and ask for full diplomatic relations. And he was repeatedly snubbed at every
Yeah, of
turn
course.
by Eisenhower and JFK's. I think that was William Foster
Because the
Dulles who said "fuck
the
off."
US the US requires full capitulation. If you want to play ball, then it's, on our terms. So that's why that looks the way it looks. And if not, if you don't fully capitulate, then use Haiti as an example, where then the US becomes basically the 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 central bank, I guess, if you will, and be in charge of Haiti's finances for the next 40 years before they actually become, fully independent of the US. And then when they do become fully independent, they're left in shambles a la Haiti. So Cuba, there's got to be something different for Cuba. And they don't want that. They've seen other examples of this. So, because the US never goes in with anything short of guns and a jackboot. So,
Yeah, no, when you're a nail, when you're a hammer, everything looks like a nail, right? That's like the US way. And it's really unfortunate. I mean, this was Ho Chi Minh too, right? Ho Chi Minh,
yeah,
at his initial inauguration, he had American flags all over the place, and he quoted from the U.S. Declaration of Independence. He said he loved the United States and admired our values, and he couldn't believe that, like, we just couldn't be friends, because he felt. Right. And he didn't understand that, like, no, this is like, we're not going to tolerate you if you're socialist in any way, because that's like, it's a deal breaker. I mean, it's absurd, obviously. All right, let's go. We have more headlines, so let's do a little bit of those. This is one of my favorites. Eric Hafner is running for Alaska's sole congressional seat, and he could tip the House of Representatives despite being, in prison. Hafner is serving 20 years in prison in the Otisville Federal Correctional Institution in New York for phoning in false bomb threats and threatening judges, cops, and lawyers in New Jersey. He has been known to run for office in lots of places where he doesn't live. Hawaii, 2016 as a Republican. Oregon, 2018 as a Democrat. This is not against the law. You don't have to live in to run for federal office. You don't have to live in the area that you are running for. And so he, at 33 years old, he entered the Alaska race as a Democrat in a nonpartisan primary. Alaska is one of those states that has one House seat, because it's right. Their population is so low. Under their
population is mostly polar bears, I heard.
Yes, that's correct. And in Alaska, they have a ranked choice voting system. For my progressive friends who keep saying how great it is, I point to Eric Adams, mayor of New York City, who won in the most high-profile win. That's an election. But anyway, the top 4 candidates from the primary in Alaska go on to the general election. Hafner came in number 6. However, 2 higher finishing Republicans who came in number 4 and 5 dropped out. That means he makes it into the final race. Now, he has now entered this tight race, which is dominated by the Democrat Mary Peltola, Republican Nick Begich, and there's a third-party candidate, John Wayne Howe. Someone's got to tell people named John not to give them the middle name Wayne. That basically turns you into a serial killer. The seat is critical. So anyway, Democrats, if they need this seat, if they want to win control of the House of Representatives, they're worried, however, that this guy is going to split the Democratic vote. He's currently polling at about 4 to 5% of the vote. So he could literally deny the Democrats the seat in the House of Representatives. And because things are so tight in the House, Manila, this guy could end up, by the way, he's stuck in prison until 2036. Right. So it's going to be hard for him to serve, but there's no law against it. And so it has happened before. I think in Ohio, there was a guy who was behind bars, and he was elected to Congress. And
I do think it's funny that the New York Times, and rightfully so, it's few and far, Ted, that I ever give them any kudos, but it's right that they pointed out that usually this is where politicians end up, is behind bars, and you don't start out your political career from behind bars. So I think that's fair. That's fair.
Yeah, that's a good point. Like, maybe this is a progress thing, and honestly, maybe the next president could pardon him, and then he could go and serve in Congress. I mean, that would be actually a smart move.
Oh my God.
That would be.
Tell me that wouldn't be the most hilarious thing. Like, look, we know Jack Smith, for example, speaking of Donald Trump, right, is still like moving forward with this other loophole he dug up to try to move forward with another, the Trump case and revive it and get him thrown behind bars for, what was it? There's so many. The Jack Smith one is what, the documents case? Is that right? Or is that, no, that's the different one. That's the one that was quashed already.
Yeah, that's the other one. Yeah.
The Jack Smith one is the J6 one.
Correct.
Right. And so he's still trying to move forward with that. So I don't know what's going to happen between now and Inauguration Day, but if for some ungodly reason, if Trump does win and he ends up in the Oval, and then they remove him and move the Oval to some federal corrections facility, because the Oval Office has to move with the president, right? Like
that's right.
He can't be fired because he becomes the president.
No, there's nothing in the Constitution that even addresses this issue. Yeah.
So theoretically, Trump could also be serving as POTUS from behind bars. The Oval will be at some correctional facility, and then he might pardon this guy in Alaska if dude wins.
Yeah, I mean, we're used to like Lula was in prison in Brazil, but that was between terms, right? He was president, then he was jailed. Pakistan, this is a routine thing. If you're prime minister of Pakistan, you're going to prison.
Straight to prison.
Then you might get out. Like, it's just like that's just that's the job. Like you're running for.
Bolsonaro's about to go to prison, or if he's So that's
it's time
just
for
part
the U.S.
of the job.
Join the developing world and and go that way. Okay, so then billionaire Elon Musk promised over the weekend to give away $1 million a day every day until the election on November 5th to someone who signs his online petition supporting the U.S. Constitution. He started right away. He awarded $1 million to an attendee of his event in Pennsylvania aimed at rallying support behind Trump. The winner was a guy named John Dreher. By the way, John had no idea. So anyway, you're welcome, the Tesla founder said as he handed Dreher the check. I don't know if it was a big foam core check with like balloons.
Ed McMahon.
Yeah, exactly. Like the Publishers Clearinghouse giveaway.
Right.
The money is the latest attempt of Musk using his wealth to influence the tightly contested race. So, look, if, you can ask, like, what has Kamala Harris, Joe Biden, or Donald Trump ever done to help the American people? I don't know the answer to that, but I do know what Elon Musk has done to help at least one American. He has turned him into a millionaire.
How many days are left? Like,
I think 35 or something?
No, until election day?
No, what am I talking about?
No.
You're right. It's November
2 weeks.
Today, so there's like 12 more days left in October.
Yeah.
So yeah, there's 16, 17 days depending on how you count.
Yeah, so Elon's going to give away, that's a fraction, $1 million a day for a random person that signs his super PACs or whatever, or signs his petitions. That's 16, 17 million bucks. That's nothing. What is that to Elon Musk? It's nothing.
No, that's nothing.
But he is, by virtue of doing that, directly impacting the lives and you would think bettering the lives of 16 or 17 lucky Americans.
Let me just say, this is part,
which is far more than
I think it's
say for the others.
Funny as shit, and it's his money to do with as he wants. But if I were friends with Elon, I know he watches this show. So Elon, may I suggest as a socialist that maybe just give $10,000 to 100 people a day instead. And you'd be affecting a lot more people's lives. I mean, not as dramatically, of course, but like, $10,000 is a lot of money. And,
I wouldn't turn my nose away from that.
No, so that's my suggestion. Finally, one more story, because we have our guest coming up at the bottom of the hour. A funeral home apologized after a corpse it was transporting fell out of a hearse and out into traffic, as can happen. Now, this is my personal part of the story. Is actually, that's not the funny part. The funny part is the name of the funeral home in Poland, the Hades Funeral Service. What a
horrible
So the driver was surprised when a white sheet fluttering onto his car window. He pushed it away only to see a body lying in the road. The driver initially was worried that he'd hit the person, who was crumpled in the middle of the crosswalk. A photo of the body circulated on local media, forcing the funeral home to finally step forward and fess up. Yeah, that was ours. Oh, our bad. It is with deep regret that we inform that as a result of the unexpected technical failure of the electric tailgate lock in the hearse during the transport of the body of the deceased, an unfortunate event occurred which does not reflect the high standards of our company, our deep empathy towards the families of the deceased, and the respect we always show to the deceased. Hades Funeral Home wrote in its statement on their website. This is one of those things where it's hard to make fun of it because it's just, there it is.
But like, I got a lot of questions for Hades Funeral Home. First of all, what's up with your name? Number one. Number two.
That's number 2 and 3 also.
But like, next, is it just a body that's like in the back of their hearse, or
that's a good question.
Like, what was the dude in a coffin? Was the dude like in a casket of any sort? Like, how does the guy just fall out and a white sheet, or
maybe he was a Muslim dude, you know, like where they wrap them up in a shroud.
I don't know. This is, I think, in Poland.
Not too many Muslims in Poland. Yeah.
So I don't know, but like, why would the driver behind the hearse get a sheet like on his windshield, and then he goes ka-thunk and goes over something and realizes, oh my God, and he thinks he hit somebody, right? And then he pulls over, looks over, is like, I killed this man. Wait, I double killed this man.
I mean, in a way, this reminds me of, I used to live in a neighborhood that was adjacent to kind of an old folks neighborhood where all these people lived in what are those apartments called that have like 4 units in one building? But anyway, it was like all old people who lived there. And I used to love garage sales and yard sales. And every now and then you'd go and someone had died, and there'd be like all of their shit out on the yard, right? Like their personal photos, their, all this stuff that was near and dear to them, maybe their diplomas, stuff that was like really like, like it was the most personal stuff. And I remember as a kid just thinking, this is where we all end up. I mean, this is it. Like all the stuff that you care so much about, it's just garbage to other people. They don't care. They don't recognize its value. Remember I used to live in an area where I had to go to the dump. They didn't have garbage pickup, and you drop off your garbage and look in the bin. And sometimes you'd see like valuable shit. I'd be like, wow, there's like first edition books in the dumpster. Wow. And I'd try to fish them out. And like, obviously people had died and people didn't know the value. And the point is that your corpse is like that too. This is like, it really helps. It's good. I'm not even kidding. It's good to remind these indignities. It reminds you that kind of like, really what's important is what's now and what's here today. And when we're alive, like, you can't be like always putting off to the future. And like, your body might fall out of the fucking car. I mean, like, it's not going to fucking matter. You're going to be that person. It does not matter. That guy doesn't need respect. It's just a body. Like, he needed respect before he died. And, my mom used to always say, don't buy me flowers when I'm dead. Buy me flowers now. And I mean,
right. Aww,
and I think that's
my mom says stuff like that too.
So I think it's like, it's just it's an indignity. It's an unfortunate thing. The Hades Funeral Home, they need to change their name like immediately, and not to like River Styx Funeral Home or Mustapha Home or whatever, but like Satan Funeral Home. Oh, that'd be cool. Like,
Hades. That's a note I'm gonna leave for my son. Don't send me off to Hades Funeral Home. That's all I gotta say. All right. Let's take a quick break because I see our guest back there.
Yay!
In case people don't know. We're gonna, if you're new to me and Ted and I, then you'll be introduced to our guest who's waiting in the background, our old friend Mark Sloboda. He's joining us in just a minute. Until then, give us just a second to get all of this stuff up and running. So until then, enjoy a couple of these Trump videos where coincidentally it's happening. Where Trump is in Butler, PA, or is it Butler? Is that right? No, Bucks County, PA, where Ted is. What a coincidence, Ted. That's kind of weird. I feel like, but all right, let's take a look at that. Take a drink of water. We'll be right back after these words from Bad Orange Man. We'll be right back.
I could do this all day. I wouldn't mind this job. But I could do this all day. I wouldn't mind this job. I like this job. I think I might come back and do it again. Thank you. Look at that.
Mr.
Look at that. How are you?
Thank you, Mr. President. You made it possible for ordinary people like us to meet you.
You're not ordinary.
I mean, thank you so
You
much
are
for
not
everything you're
ordinary. I
doing.
can see.
We pray for you, and you are the type of person we want to be the president.
Thank you very much.
Thank you so much.
So nice. Thank you very much. Yeah, I took a bullet. That's right.
Thank you, Mr. President.
When you think about it, I guess that's right.
Thank you.
Thank you very much. But I could do this all day. I wouldn't mind this job.
All right, that's enough of that. Let's bring in
For a
our
second
buddy.
there, when I first saw that, I thought it was AI the first time I
Oh,
saw it.
you did?
And then it was like, no, that's really him.
No, that's really him. But how come they didn't make him wear a hairnet? That's what I want to know.
Do they always wear hairnets? I thought that was only in the kitchen. Well, he was in the
But I
kitchen.
don't know. He's walking around, and I feel like that hair isn't very stable. Even though he's, what do you say? He's a stable genius.
He's
I
a
don't know
very
about how
his
stable.
hair might
What else?
not be a
It's
stable.
not, yeah, it's a lot of hairspray from. I do know the makeup artist, or at least one of them that does his hair and makeup at the
Mm,
White House, or
mm,
did
mm,
anyway. And she did confirm it's his hair, and
mm.
it's a lot of hairspray. Just saying. Just saying. All right, let's move over. Let's bring in our old friend to the show. His first appearance. I'm sure it's not going to be the last. Our buddy Mark Sloboda is joining us for the first time on the TMI show. Good morning or evening to you, Mark.
Hey, Mark.
Ted, Manila, thanks for having me. It's an honor and a pleasure to be on the TMI show. It's so nice to meet you.
First
Yes.
time.
First time. Have we met before? I don't know. You look familiar.
We should.
I might sound familiar. I don't know if I look familiar.
That's right. Well, I know what you look like.
Yes.
So for those who don't know, Mark Sloboda is an international relations and security analyst. He's a former U.S. Naval nuclear engineer, and he hosts The Real Politic with Mark Sloboda, which I think you can find back, right, on YouTube, Substack, Telegram, all that. Is that still the case?
It is back. I will not be posting on YouTube any further due to the censorship regime, but it is. You can at least catch the back episodes there. I will be posting other things on other platforms in the future.
Okay, so you're working on that. So then you got to tell us where to find it and all that stuff so we can tell everybody how to reach you and support you on those new platforms. Because, you know, Ted and I are in the same boat, obviously trying to figure out all the different platforms where we can go, where we won't be censored. So
Good luck with that.
yeah, I know. Ted, you want to start us off? I'm going to get this video, look for some video. To post up here.
Sure, absolutely. So, Mark, in our previous iteration and my post Manila iterations, has always been our go-to person to talk about the Russo-Ukrainian conflict and some other stuff. So we thought we would check in the wake of the statement by the G7 that Ukraine is now on an irrevocable course towards NATO membership. And we kind of talked about this in the headlines. I'm sure you didn't hear this, Mark, but we were kind of like making fun of the idea that anything is irrevocable or irreversible I'm sure that, like, if an asteroid hits the Earth, that Ukraine might have trouble joining NATO.
No, they'll join posthumously.
Yes, if whatever's left of Ukraine, the ashes could join it. But I wanted to just generally check on the status of the war, and I really wanted to get your thoughts about the G7 statement that Ukraine is definitely going to be a member of NATO at some point in the future. We don't know when or what those circumstances would look like. And also about the news that NATO is complaining, I love this, that North Korean troops are fighting for Russia in Ukraine, and that the North Koreans, are destabilizing the situation between Russia and Ukraine. Mark, I'm sure you have thoughts.
Yeah, well, hell, if the G7 says something, well, then it must be so, because we all know that the G7 is the most important multilateral institution in the world today.
Obviously.
not so much. So yeah, I mean, this has been the refrain really since 2008. I mean, back that far, when in Budapest at a NATO summit, it was declared that Ukraine and Georgia would one day become members of NATO. And when polls at the time in Ukraine showed the majority of the population had absolutely no interest in NATO, but they were going to be made to want to join NATO one way or another. So I mean, they can talk all they want, but saying so isn't going to make it so. And this is obviously still going to be settled on the battlefield, however long it takes to do that. And there, it has to be said that the conditions are looking increasingly bleak. We have had comments in the British media where, off the record, right, anonymous British military are saying that the Kiev regime's military is close to defeat. Certainly in the Donbass, that is certainly in the Donbass, and they look unable to hold Russian forces to do anything more than slow them down anywhere else. And you're going to hear, I think, within the next 3 months, a succession of these final redoubts in the Donbass, like Selidova, Chasiv Yar, Pokrovsk, Krahova, Toretsk, Seversk fall one after the other, because Russia's not assaulting one of them right now. Russia is storming all of them at the same time. And they look set to possibly begin a new offensive of their own from the south in the Zaporozhye region within the next month. That is a distinct possibility from the buildup of forces and the artillery preparation and diversion and reconnaissance groups activity that we've seen there. So if only wishing and PR statements like Ukraine will join NATO actually won a conflict, well, then it would have been won long ago by the West, but it doesn't.
Mark, we got a viewer question for you. Adrian asks about Odessa and Kherson City, and how does Russia cross the Dnieper on pontoon bridges?
Yeah. Okay. So I do not see an amphibious assault on Kherson City.
Did you say Nazi?
No, I wouldn't say that. Particularly not if you're saying this on YouTube, because you put
Correct.
that word together with Ukraine and there goes your channel. Yeah, I do not see a contested amphibious crossing of the Dnieper any point in the near future. I don't think that Kherson City is in Russia's priority list right now. I think that they will continue to operate on the east side of the Dnieper, that they will clean up Donbass, probably.
Mark, would the lack of it being a priority for this to capture the city be in part due to the logistical challenge of having to feed and take care of a major urban center?
That is a concern, right? But that at this point, while Russia is still fighting a war of attrition, there are two caveats. In order to pursue that war of attrition, increasingly it has to take more Kiev regime territory, whether that's their primary goal or not. And up until this point in the conflict, it hasn't been. But at the end of this conflict, the very minimum Russian goals, territorially wise, include all of the Donbass, Kherson, and Zaporozhye. And it has to be remembered that Russia did control Kherson City up until the fall of 2022, when they withdrew from it. So I don't think it's so much the logistical about supporting the civilian population of the city. I think it's logistical and the losses that would be incurred in a Dnieper River crossing. I
Mm.
think right now with the big breakthrough that occurred at Avdiivka and now all the way through to Pokrovsk in Russian in the Kiev regime's defensive lines that they built up there over a decade of civil conflict in the country before Russia intervened. That Russia wants to finish the Donbass. It wants to bring that conflict to a close. And the way things are set now, Russia should, I believe, secure all of the Donbass, if the pace stays constant by next summer.
How big is the Dnieper River?
It's a significant river, right? It's not something that can be crossed by troops and vehicles really anywhere.
They can't ford the river. They can't ford the river.
Yeah, they can't ford it, and even pontoon bridges across the Dnieper are a significant engineering challenge. Right, it's not like rivers in the Donbass region, like the Oskol or something, that can be easily pontooned. It's quite more significant than that. It may come at some point in this conflict, and to get to Odessa, right? That is first Kherson City, and then Nikolaev, and only then Odessa. So that's a much more significant challenge. And I think it would be far more likely that if Russia was to militarily move on Odessa, something they probably really don't want to do, if they have goals towards Odessa, they would probably prefer to achieve those politically rather than militarily have to take and damage a city that size, particularly a historically Russian city like Odessa, the historical significance of it. So I think Odessa is much later in this conflict, and hopefully it doesn't have to be settled militarily, but that may happen. But then Russia is more than likely to come to Odessa from the north after having already crossed the Dnieper in other locations, much like the Soviet Union did when they ejected Nazi Germany and their Western Ukrainian fascist allies in World War II from Odessa, rather than some type of amphibious or contested crossing of the Dnieper.
Mark, let's talk about these North Korean troops. Is that a real thing? Is that actually happening or not?
No, it's not. It's not. And I'm curious, did you say that NATO was complaining about that, or is that comments from the Kiev regime? Because
NATO is complaining.
NATO. Okay. Yes. All right. So as of late last week, the last time I heard of it, no one in the West had actually, backed this statements up. They were just ignoring it. No official government sources. So no, I do not believe that there are North Korean troops involved in the conflict. Now, North Korean troops may be learning behind the lines, right, because of an existing military alliance now, effectively, from Russian logistics, right? They may be interested in learning what Russia is doing, right? Sure. If you listen to Western military accounts, some of the artillery shells and perhaps even some of the ballistic missiles Russia is using are from North Korea, although there is no evidence that has been presented that can confirm that on the battlefield. And Russia and North Korea both deny it. But Russia does not need North Korean troops. It would add an international dimension and criticism of Russia in this conflict that Russia simply does not militarily need and does not diplomatically want. These claims, and these are ridiculous, right? The Kiev regime keeps taking pictures of Russian soldiers from the Far East, from Buryatia, and claiming, oh, it's North Koreans in Russian uniforms.
Oh, my God.
Hello? Russia has over 200 ethnicities. It is the largest country in the world. And a
Some of
lot
them
of
look
those
like me.
are not white
Absolutely, they do.
European-looking people. I mean, I know it's a shocker. In fact, large numbers of them are, right?
Well, the Germans used to complain about that too during World War II. The Asiatic horror.
Yeah, well,
of
that's
the
a
Soviet Union.
whole feature of the Kiev regime's propaganda from the beginning, that Russia is the Asiatic Mongol hordes coming,
Oh my
and they
God.
are the shield of Western civilization from these mongoloid Russian Asians. That has
Right.
been part of the Kiev regime's Banderite, fascist, racist propaganda
Yes.
from before the conflict started.
Yeah, you're absolutely right. And I took umbrage to that because my great, I don't know how far back we go in great, but I have lineage. I'm a descendant of Mongolians. So this is like, so wait a minute. When you're complaining about the Russians who look like me, the folks in Ukraine complaining about faces like mine, it's just such racist bullshit, and nobody in American mainstream media ever points that out when the race card is clearly vitally important, Mark. I mean, it is it's the main feature of the 2024 elections, don't you know? And
It's
and
really
Kamala
bizarre
Harris
too, because it's
says
like,
she's going to continue with with this war.
from the Ukrainian point of view, it's kind of like, okay, well, you're in a war with another country. I don't know. I don't really care what the people look like who are shooting at me, or I'm shooting at them. I mean, it's a war, right? Who cares what they look like? That's like a minor detail.
Well, that kind of goes against the whole ideology on the Kiev regime side that has driven so much of this conflict, though. I think all of these claims and they originate with the Kiev regime, if NATO has started to pick them up, it is the Kiev regime trying to drag NATO countries, maybe not all of NATO, but Western countries directly into the conflict. See, North Koreans are fighting on the Russian side. Really, they're not from Buryatia. You should be fighting directly on our side. And there are plenty of neocons throughout the West that will amplify that message and push it, lobbying for direct military intervention by NATO against Russia.
Well, Mark, let me throw that at you about the 2024 US presidential elections. I mean, we're roughly 2 weeks out, if you can believe it. Trump has said publicly, right, finally, can it be over? Trump says,
I'm just sick of Americans talking about the election, to be perfectly honest.
Talk about, I mean, I live it. I'm in DC, right? I mean, I'm just like right in the thick of it. But Trump says he's going to end it immediately. It wouldn't have ever started, blah, blah, blah. He's getting a lot of blowback about that, but he's the only one talking about ending the conflict. Harris has vowed to continue military and financial support for Ukraine and NATO. And she talked about in her acceptance speech at the Democratic National Convention, where she literally used the language to say that the US military is going to be the deadliest, most lethal fighting force in the US or in the world, and we're going to continue to back all of our friends around the world. What is your read being overseas now, living abroad? When you look over here and these two front runner candidates, it's one of these two that's going to win. How are people in Russia looking at what's happening and who might win?
Okay, I don't actually think people in Russia are too concerned about the U.S. election. I mean,
really?
No, it doesn't
Americans
make any difference
have
to them.
A belief that everyone in the world is waiting with bated breath to find out who wins the newest U.S. election, and we don't really care.
Mark, would that be different if the two candidates differed dramatically on Russia-Ukraine policy?
No, I don't think so. First of all, because no one believes anything a U.S. politician said. Donald Trump just said over the weekend that he told Putin he would bomb the center of Moscow, right? And the Russian, Medvedev, the former Russian president and prime minister, and the Russian presidential spokesman just rolled their eyes and like, sure, he did. Yeah, he said that. All right. They have said outright, that statements like this are just part of campaign rhetoric. But the truth is that Russia has, endured a Trump presidency before, and Trump campaigned on a policy of improving relations with Russia. It was the one consistent foreign policy position that he campaigned on. And what happened when he got elected? He hired a bunch of neocons to run his foreign policy, and Russian-U.S. relations decreased to the worst point they had been at that point. He enacted hundreds of sanctions against Russia, and according to him, at least, he started already arming the Kiev regime with offensive U.S. military equipment even back then. So the official Russian government position on the U.S. election is that whoever's elected, it won't change U.S. foreign policy towards Russia or the conflict in Ukraine at all. Basically, that, Americans think their president actually controls foreign policy, whereas the Russian government position is that the U.S., if you want to call it the blob, as Ben Rhodes did, the deep state, the permanent bureaucracy, and that a president, whatever they may believe, when they come into office, find themselves restricted by the constraints of the office of the presidency of the United States. So, but I mean, even if you look at the polls in the U.S., I just pulled up some YouGov polls on it, right? The concern about the conflict in Ukraine is not even in the top 50 issues for American voters. So it's hard to see how it can affect the U.S. election in any real way. It also says that the majority of Americans favor maintaining aid to the Kiev regime in Ukraine, military aid, or increasing it. And that even if you take a look at the Republican Party, Republican voters in isolation from, say, Democrats and independents, while 44% of Republicans are in favor of decreasing military aid to Ukraine, there's still 40% of them that want to keep it the same or increase it. All right, even among Republicans. So that being said, the idea that the question of U.S. military aid being an important point in the U.S. election is wrong. I don't think it's important to U.S. voters at all. And what that means is that government policy will continue to ignore U.S. public opinion on it because they don't vote on the issue. They don't significantly care on it. And it also tells us, the same YouGov poll tells us that as of August, most Americans still believe that the Kiev regime is winning the conflict, particularly after all the ridiculous noise about Kursk. So, well, yeah. I mean, we have a severely not just not informed, but a severely disinformed American population on vital foreign policy issues like this.
De-informed.
Yeah, like, oh God. I mean, I couldn't tell you with the video that I was looking to play while we were having this conversation. Every video that's on YouTube is completely the narrative that Ukraine is winning. Ukraine is winning. There's just nothing else.
Ukraine is winning. Ukraine has always been winning. Ukraine will always be.
Ukraine is already winning.
Ukraine is already is in Moscow.
I made a phone call to the future.
They're in Buryatya, evidently, because they keep finding North Koreans.
This is just wild stuff. Well, Mark, we're going to have to leave it right there, but we obviously invite you back anytime. You are our go-to analyst, and I'm so annoyed about your channel, your personal YouTube channel, and what happened there, and hopefully the viewership will go and support you wherever it is that you move your stuff to, because your analysis is greatly needed. And we appreciate you being here with us as always. Mark, if you guys don't know, Mark Sloboda is an international relations and security analyst. He is a former U.S. Naval nuclear engineer, and he is the host of The Real Politic with Mark Sloboda, which you can find the archives of on YouTube, and find him on Substack and Telegram. Mark Sloboda, our buddy, thank you so much for carving out some
Thank
time
you,
for
Mark.
us.
Thank you. And it's so great to see you two together again.
Oh, it's good to
Thanks,
be back
Mark.
together, and it's great to see you too.
Cheers.
Bye-bye. All right. That feels like we've done this once or twice before, Ted. That feels really familiar.
Once or twice, yeah.
Yeah,
And
a couple of times.
This as they say in the reboot of Battlestar Galactica, all this has happened before, and all this will happen again.
It's deja vu. Anyway, we got to remind you guys, please, if you are in the Rumble chat, please hit that subscribe button, not the $sign. Please hit the subscribe button that's next to it to become a monthly $5 supporter. When I say $5 monthly sub, it's not like Subway sandwiches. I'm not making you any sandwiches just yet. I know I'm out of work, but I'm not working at Subway just yet. So if you guys can help us out and support our work, if you like what you see, you like and would want us to continue doing this, we ask that you please become a paid subscriber, just $5 a month, so we can keep doing this show for you and bringing on cool and unique guests. We have a lot of stuff that we are planning that's very different than our previous show, that I think you guys will find very interesting and entertaining. So if you find value in our work, please do support us if you're watching on Rumble by hitting that subscribe button, $5 a month. And that will keep us independent, because we will rely on subscribers so we don't starve and become homeless. Right, Ted?
That would be not good. The
that would
Wi-Fi
be
signal
ideal.
from under the bridge isn't just not that good.
Oh, do you think Elon will give us free Starlink for like the homeless folk? Maybe we can like petition.
It's a good idea.
I mean, might help. Anyway, we are keeping it right there, dropping it right there. 1 hour, guys. We're keeping it tight. If it ain't tight, it ain't right. Thank you so much for joining us. Putinbot Gaming, thank you for supporting us and helping us moderate the chat, of course, and keeping the spammers out of there. And of course, people that are throwing shade for no reason other than to rabble rouse. We have no problem with people disagreeing. Just don't be a troll. And Putinbot is going to be there to drop the hammer. So thank you. And please go check out that channel to subscribe to that channel to help indie creators like Putinbot as well. So, all right, that's going to do it. That is going to do it. I am Manila Chan. That's Ted Rall. We'll be back tomorrow, 10 a.m. Eastern, for more stuff that you just didn't even know that you needed to know about, guys. So that'll do it. Hasta mañana, folks. Adios, amigos.
Au revoir. A bientôt.